Okay, what's going on, Ray?
How's it going?
It's good to have you again. So, for everyone joining us today, this is our episode 2 of the Be Beautiful podcast. My name is Cody. I am from Be Beautiful Foundation and Zupac Athletic Club. Be Beautiful Foundation is our nonprofit project aimed at promoting health and wellness with specific interests towards assisting athletes living with developmental disabilities. We use this podcast to talk about the latest in sports and health and wellness, including long distance triathlon and mental health counseling skills and how we incorporate those into working with our athletes. I myself am a USAT level 1 triathlon coach, a certified personal trainer, and a licensed professional counselor in the state of New Jersey. With me today, we have my coach and one of my good friends, ex professional triathlete, Raymond Botelho. What's going on, Ray? Do you want to just introduce yourself real quick?
Hey, Cody, how's it going? My name is Ray Botelho. I'm a coach, longtime triathlete. We're focusing mostly now lately on coaching and personal training, so I'm having a really good time.
Awesome. So, Ray, I know we have a bunch of topics that we want to get into today. For everyone joining us, we're going to be talking today about heart rate zones, how to use them, what recovery is, and how to use recovery as a tool, FTP as it pertains to long distance cycling and triathlon. We're going to talk a little bit about volume. And then one of my favorite topics, nutrition and fueling. Before we get started, I just want to make sure everyone knows where to find us. If you like our content and you want to check us out, you can look us up at www.zoopacac.com. That's ZOOPAKAC.com, which is our hub for all things Zoopac, including Be Beautiful Foundation. If you want more information specifically on how to find out about our nonprofit project and how to get involved, check us out at bebeautifulfoundation.org. Our Instagram, Facebook page is Be Beautiful Foundation, as well as Zupac Athletic Club. And then, of course, our latest project, our YouTube channel, which has a multiple series on mental health counseling, how it pertains to sports counseling, episodes of the Be Beautiful podcast, and reviews on all of our favorite brands and sponsors. You can check us out on YouTube at Zupac Athletic Club. Ray, if you want to just put your tags in for where to find you on social media and your website.
Great, thanks. Yeah, so my Instagram and everything linked to that is at RayWatch73, and my website is raybotellofitness.com, and everything is linked. My Instagram, and Facebook and all the social media outlets. So one of them will you will lead you to all of them. If you want to get in touch with me, you can DM me, email me, call me, anything, any way you desire. So I'm
Awesome.
available.
Thanks, Ray. And then also for anyone that does jump on to coaching, either through the Be Beautiful Foundation or through uh, one-on-one coaching specifically with Ray, we also have the team Facebook group, RB Fitness Racing, where we post all of our sponsors, discount codes, and events, including training camps coming up. Um, Ray, why don't you give us a quick plug on your next camp coming up, I believe in Texas?
Yeah, so we're trying to build up a nice camp. This will be over 20 camps I've done now over the course of the last 11 years. The first camp was in 2014. We typically do one in the spring, which is pre the Classic Ironman in Texas. And then we'll do a late summer, early fall, if you will, for where Kona. Anyone going to Kona or aspiring to go to Kona, and then also any late season races, specifically Ironman and half Ironman. It's a long weekend of some really good volume, and then it's with yours truly. I'm there. You live in vicarious to you guys. You can watch me and the moves I make, and we cover everything from getting ready for a camp, what to expect, being able to really expect anything and be prepared for anything, as I say, and then everything from the restoration, recovery to any types of training that we might do in a group setting with a mixture of all levels and abilities, beginner to professional. Period. So it's a non-competitive camp, if you will. We invite anyone. We do open water swimming. And we swim in the pool, of course, but we focus on open water swimming, and we do a lot of training on the bike, and we also use we use the Ironman Texas Run course. So it's pretty it's a blast. And I think this is like I said, over 20 camps we've done now in the last 11 years, 2 or 3 a year, and the group is anywhere from say 12-ish to I've had as many as 27. So great time. So if you want to come down. We'd love to have you.
Awesome. Thanks, Ray. So if you're watching this video, next camp coming up is going to be Camp Texas 2025. It's a blast. I've done that one. I've been with you up at Lake Placid. Hoping we get the one Florida up and running again. It's by far the best time, the best money you can spend. I know everyone always asks, what's the next upgrade for your bike or your gear? Best upgrade you can do is upgrading yourself. Come to a camp, spend some time with a pro coach. I've been going to these camps with you for the past 6 years, Ray. I always leave with something new every single time.
Thank you. Yeah, and again, it's well, everyone loves doing what they do, but I love doing this. I love coaching. I love doing the camp. So I want to make it very affordable. And it's not a whole week, if you will. No offense to a week-long camp, but I figured a 3-day camp, you'll get a lot more yeses and a lot more approvals from the significant others, if you will, to come. Basically, it's a Friday, Saturday, Sunday. You maybe travel Thursday and Monday. We do make some exceptions. We're not super strict, but like the more you're there, the better. And we do use the 3 days, and we do get a lot of training in. It's really really extensive, and I make sure everyone is safe, and we get a lot accomplished. So yeah.
Yeah, like I said, can't speak highly enough about it. For anyone questioning 3 days versus 7 days, I have yet to see anyone, tapering into a race, peak fitness, not be tired at the end of it. It's all about that quality, and above all, we train so much by ourselves, so it's fun to just get together with a group and be able to ride with other people. And I've had long-term friends from some of the camps, and we stay together, and everyone stays in touch through the season. We follow each other through the races. We see each other at races throughout the year. Camp Texas is by far the best one, just because it's early enough in the year that we stick together through the remainder of the season. Okay. Ray, I want to jump right into things. So I know when we were talking over the phone, you had something in your mind about heart rate and how to use it and why we use heart rate. So I'm going to let you jump right into it. Heart rate. Let's go.
So for me, it all starts with heart rate. It tells you so much. And we have all these devices now, these fascinating devices, helpful devices. They're great learning tools, but they're also great for anyone. The guys at the highest end are using them. Okay, so I feel like that's the first bit of information I feel like you need at any level. It's how I got started. It's how I was taught, and I've just seen what it has done. I feel like it extends a career, whether it's an amateur career or it's a hobby career or it's a professional. It extends everything because it really teaches you how to pace yourself, literally. The number is yours. Yes, everyone's is different, but these sets of zones, if you will, and again, I want to get into how we make the zones, or how I suggest you make the zones. I really feel like there should be a recovery zone. So that would be zone R. It all starts at the lower end. A lot of people talk about the higher end and what is their max and what is their VO2, I'm hearing more and more about the zone 2 craze that's out there now. So I think it's a little bit misleading, especially at the amateur level, because when you refer to zone 2 to me, well, that's how I paced my Ironman career. That's how I was taught and how I was trained, how I prepared. I raced basically in what I refer to as my zone 2. Now, it doesn't mean your zone 2, Cody, is the same or anyone else's, or that doesn't necessarily mean at what speed or what rate of effort or power you're going at, but everyone's zone 2 is different, but that is sort of the correct pace, if you will, for any type of Ironman race, quite frankly. Now, the more advanced you get, the more experience you get, the numbers tend to be a little bit more on the conservative side, but I feel like that always leads to good things where if sort of that old saying, it's under promise, over deliver. So the way I make the zones for my athletes, yeah, I always maybe shoot a little low, but I'm talking 2 or 3 beats. and that's not going to sabotage anyone's performance. Trust me. If anything, it's going to hold you back a little bit for the
Mm-hmm.
long. And now, again, back to the actual creating of the zones. The zones should be 10 beats per zone, period. I've seen people with just create like different, like too big of a zone to really sort of, because the idea is you want to be smooth. You want to hone in and really tighten these efforts up so that they're very diverse, very different. Zone R, zone one, zone two, up to, in some cases, people have zone five, right? And
Mm-hmm.
then there's a gray area, right? So in order to adjust the zones based on, yes, it's quite frankly, it's pretty simple. It's age and your athletic background. It really doesn't pertain to ability per se, because let's say your max is 185 and you're a beginner, or if your max is 185 and you're a world champion,
Mm-hmm.
you're definitely going to have your zones are going to be set, and they are what they are. Now the thing is, the paces are going to be different. So the current Ironman World Champions Zone Two is obviously different than your Zone Two. Like when I say you, a beginner, novice, maybe
Mm-hmm.
one time Ironman, right? Obviously, that should be quite obvious. So, but the name of the game is developing the lower zones, because without the lower zones, then you're talking too much intensity, and then that leads to burnout, plateau, overtraining, injuries. So
Mm-hmm.
you need to, again, sort of a hokey saying, you have to walk before you can run. You've got to really start there. You can't go from walk to a sprint. You've got to.
Mm-hmm.
And an Ironman is a long
Yeah.
process.
So, Ray,
And
let me jump in there
yeah,
for a second, real quick,
yeah,
then.
yeah,
So, um, what I'm hearing is a two-part thing. One, I love that analogy that you use, that we all have zones, but the pace is different. So
absolutely.
my zone two, or my race pace, is going to be different than Christian Blumenfeld's zone two, where he's running sub 5 minute miles. I'm running, 6.5 minute miles. So they're both zone two, but he's a minute and a half faster a mile than me. So our level of fitness per zone will vary, but the heart rate zone, as you said, is going to guide how we are training and managing burnout. Now, I know we talked about it in the last podcast, but for anyone that hasn't listened to that yet, Ray, I do want you to break down your zones, because we've seen there are different systems with different coaches,
Mhm.
and some people use a different series of zones.
Yeah,
I've seen
yeah.
1 to 3. I've seen your zone recovery. I've seen some sets that have zone 7.
Mhm.
So can you break down your zones before we go further?
Sure. So the standard chart, if you will, is 1 through, I think, 6, right? If you look
Mm-hmm.
at Training Peaks, when you open up Training Peaks, they have it basically 1 through, you'll have 5A, 5B.
Mm-hmm.
You can really look, if you have a relationship with an athlete and you have your own style. I mean, there's no real right or wrong way. What I'm trying to get across is you've got to decipher the recovery zone. You've got to know where your lowest end is at, because you are doing recovery training. And recovery training is not a day off. Recovery training is recovery training. A day off to me is a day off, nothing. So when you're referring to a recovery workout, I'm looking for a specific number. Like so me personally, when I'm doing a recovery ride, my heart rate is in the double digits. Okay. So to me, that is recovery. Okay. When I'm riding aerobically, it's this number. And so you cross the zones. You may have some they call it cardiac drift or cross. So so if you're trying to average the top of a zone, let's say you wanted to average 120. Well, in order to average 120, you probably want to touch to 125, right? So
Mm-hmm.
if it's 110, excuse me, if it's 115, or excuse me, yeah, if it's 110 to 120, then to average the top of that zone, you're probably going to want to step into 125. But that doesn't mean at any point you go to 130. See, that's overpacing. So
Yeah.
if you
Now, Ray, I'm sorry to interrupt, Ray, but I know this is a very complicated topic, so I want to make sure we're very specific about it. And again, when you say going to 125, would that be for the person that's outside, or maybe on the Zwift unit if there's a hill and their heart rate goes a little bit above that 120 that we're talking about?
yeah.
Is that okay, or should they slow down as they go?
So again, if you're like take myself again. If you're really bought into the heart rate training, you are really paying attention to that zone, and you have 10 beats to work with. That's a pretty
Mhm.
large window. So if I'm on a ride, okay, and I want to, again, let's say I want to average 120.
Mhm.
So I will not go, I mean, I really honestly will not go over 125, because if it's in the longer the ride you're on, it's probably easier to average in the lower. But if you're on an hour ride and you're supposed to stay sub 120, right, or average right at 120, if you start spending time in 130, 135, you're that's overpaced. That's now a zone one ride or whatever zone that's going to be. It's whatever, whoever you are. But I'm just using the number as an example.
Yeah.
So if it's 110 to 120, I wouldn't personally go over 125. If you want to be really disciplined and smooth, and ironically, so if you pair that with power, a smooth ride via a power meter, it's going to do the same thing. So, like, no power spiking means, if you're supposed to stay at 200 watts, well, you don't want to be at 260 watts, right? You maybe go to 250, you might go 50, but briefly, right? Again, that's keeping it tight, keeping it very tight. So the heart rate zone is 10 beats, and then you have your power zones. There might be a little bit bigger, but again, the idea is to keep it tight. And so what I normally do is if it's 110 to 120, 120, 130, 130, 140, 140, and so on, you cross over if it's a zone two effort, and that's say it's zone two for you is 130 to 140. Well, you can go to 145, but that would really be the ceiling, because otherwise you're overpacing. And then
Mhm.
that's gonna jumble up all of your workouts, because you've got recovery workouts, you've got aerobic workouts. That's zone one, tempo, zone two, threshold, zone three, super, anaerobic
Yep.
is four, and then at your limit, you're into five. So that's really six zones that I'm giving you.
Yep.
That's enough to work with. And with Ironman, I really feel like the majority of the training should not go over zone two, really zone one, like honestly, zone one. Because if I'm giving you a recovery zone, some people say, "Oh, okay, well, you have a recovery zone. That means your zone one is really zone two." No, because I've started the recovery zone so low in the
Mhm.
zone in the chart that it's very, very, very low intensity. And to cross reference again with pace, if you tell me that your recovery pace is 10 flat, okay, well, I want to see the heart rate paired with that. And if I see, let's say, to me, a heart rate of 135, that's not recovery. You're starting to
Yeah.
get
You're too
too.
high.
So the name of the game is, when I build the zones, I'm just trying to hold you back. It's for a good intention, especially with with Ironman, with marathon training, with even 70.3 training, the bulk of it. I mean, you're not racing an Ironman, especially a novice, amateur, beginner, at threshold. You're just not. I mean, if those numbers, if you really know what they are, if you're at threshold, your fueling is going not go well. You're not going to. You cannot fuel for 9, 10, 11, 12 hours at threshold.
Yeah. It's not
I'm
going to
sorry,
work.
offense, but it's not possible, right?
So, right. Um, so just to be clear, I know for you, we have our zone recovery, which is way low, and then zone one, which is our, traditional low end, taking it easy kind of speed. Zone two is all day race pace. Zone three, we're pushing for that hour. Zone four, we're anaerobic. And then zone five, we're neuromuscular. We're tapped
Yeah,
out through the roof.
that's your stealing. Yeah.
So, so my question for you is, for anyone listening that's interested in trying your zones, what tests do you use to establish heart rate zones?
Okay. So I really I mean, you have to, everyone has some training history. And even if someone said to me, "Oh, if I take on a new athlete at any level and they say, "Oh, I don't, I don't track my heart rate," I don't know. And I'd be, at this point of the era, I'd be pretty shocked that someone doesn't have any clue, because all these devices are promoting
Yeah.
more data, which is, and first and foremost, with heart rate variability, we talked about the other day, you need to know your heart rate. And even if you weren't tracking it, it provides it, because the watch, though I don't really agree with the accuracy, reads from the wrist. So you do have some, if you have any kind of record of anything, you do have. So anyway, I say, can you please give me some history of heart rate where you've seen some sort of a max in the last 2 to 3 months? And let's say you show me and I see 177 and
Mhm.
you're 38 years old. So that would give me sort of an idea that the person is pretty fit, they have a pretty good capacity. But then when I see that 77 max in their history, what kind of pace was that, right? So if it's a 7:15 and it was a 5K and they averaged 164 heart rate for the 5K and they maxed out at 177, then I could honestly quite quickly make you zones, and it starts from the bottom. Now I feel like everyone, and that is everyone, should be able to cycling is it's easy, because to me
Mhm.
there's no debate and I can show it to you in any example at any ability. Your average heart rate on a recovery ride should be in the double digits. And
Mhm.
I, again, not no offense, females included, and I'm well aware that women, especially younger, have much higher heart rates than men do. It's just the way it is. But still, if you go slow enough, if you really learn how to do this, you buy into it, if you really want to improve, I'm telling you, those workouts go as slow as possible. And then what
Yep.
happens is day one, it's a struggle. It's a struggle to find the right cadence. It's a struggle to actually get your heart rate to that low. But if you look 3, 4 months down the road, and to me, that's a blink of an eye. That is
Mhm.
no time at all. You will start to see it will happen, because I get messages all the time. Oh my God, I'm it's getting there. I'm at 111 and I'm at, but the ultimate for me is if you could ride at 100 watts for 70 minutes
Mhm.
and get your heart rate below 100 as an average. Like in other words, literally see sub 99.
Mhm.
Anyone I know for a fact, because I've worked with every age and ability, that
Mhm.
you can ride 100. Anyone, of course, any of us can ride at 100 watts. It's not
Yeah.
it's not that, but to see at 100 watts what your heart rate is day one. And I'm telling you right now, if you those typically 1 or 2 recovery rides a week, especially for an Ironman training athlete, if I gave you 1 or 2 a week and you did this, gave me the 100, 65 minutes or 70-minute recovery ride on Monday or whenever I throw it in there, 100 watts, 100 watts, 100 watts, 100 watts, 100 watts, and you're going to see that heart rate go down at 100
Mhm.
watts. Now, what does that mean? That means you're getting stronger, period, without doing any intensity. If you're doing the rest of your training, the volume, the tempo, the Tabatas, the this and that, these are the sessions that really, really show you, this is your weekly test or quiz, if you will, show you at any level to how to not burn out and to see that you're getting fit. Because to me personally, there's nothing better than seeing what kind of power I could produce at a sub 100 heart rate. Now you flip it, okay? You give the challenge of 100 watts max, see what you get. Now flip it. You take an elite athlete. You take
Yep.
an elite athlete. Go ahead, go as slow as possible and see what kind of wattage you produce. In other words, you are not allowed to go over 100 heart rate, and I want to see the wattage that you produce. And I'm telling you right now, at the elite level, you're going to see 150 watts, 160 watts, 200 watts. I know for a fact because I've done it, where you can actually see 200 watts with a below 100 heart rate. I've done it. So, but that is crazy strength, crazy fit, crazy hours aerobically riding, like hours that a lot of people with real jobs can't do. But I'm just saying that's the standard to me, not 300 watts, like, or people talk the high end.
Yep.
When I see the low end, a woman averaging 70 watts and her heart rate is 100,
Mhm.
that's impressive to me. A male, 100 watts with an 89 average heart rate, that's impressive to me. But when you start to see a 99 average heart rate at 150 watts, that is, to me, like, personally, if I saw someone with an 89 average heart rate with a 150 watts, I'm like, okay, he's ready to race pretty hard. And meet yours truly. I've seen these
Yeah,
numbers.
I hear you, Ray. I hear you.
So
So let's ask about the next item. So because I love what you're saying about go slow, watch what the heart rate does, and then seeing the difference between an elite athlete versus even a pro athlete. But, and I've been there, so I can speak to it. It works. Not everyone, though, is completely sold on heart rate or ready to commit to it. And what I find, especially when I'm working with some of the new athletes or we're doing the counseling portion, the term FTP gets dropped more than any other item line in cycling.
Mhm.
So, what's your take on using FTP and how does that apply to heart rate, like we were just talking about?
Okay. And again, not to offend anyone, this is from the bottom of my heart. Okay. This is my experience in my career, coaching, being coached, working with some of the best. I've done one FTP test in my career, one time. And I still to this day don't know how we utilized it. No offense. I just don't. Now, I self-coached myself for a number of years after the fact, and I learned to understand that supposedly your FTP, right, is your 1 hour power. Okay, and that stuck with me. Okay, so FTP is my 1 hour power. So then what can I ride? What is my 1 hour power? And over the years, I have history and I've seen it. And I've looked at athletes I've worked with, strong, beginner, novice, male, female, beginner, professional, elite. Whatever. And I realized that, especially with using Training Peaks gives you all kinds of all-time or personal best, if you will, peak powers. So there's anything from, I believe, 1 minute up to 90 minutes. You have peak power. So, and where do these come from? These come from rides you go on, races you do, whether it be inside or outside on Zwift, or you did a triathlon, or you did a time trial, or you just were in a group ride hammering. You get this data, right? So, and I happen to pull my own personal ones from racing. From I do a time trial, and I also do, obviously the Ironman 70.3. So what better place to pull these 1 hour peak performances from? Now, what I feel is the FTP test, right? Believe me, I understand how it's done. There's a couple of different ways to do it. There's certain mathematics and figures to equate the said FTP, right? Uh, Places like Zwift auto calculated for you now if you put in the right data into the software. But that number to me leads to an inflated number. Now, again, I'm speaking to novice athletes, the bulk of our industry, who predominantly who I coach, okay, and who I'm trying to help. The beginner up to that novice guy who's been doing this, or gal who's been doing this for a long time and just wants to really improve and is dedicated to learning and improving. So the FTP test just tends to lead to inflated numbers because the efforts are what, 3 or 5 minutes, and then 20 or 25 minutes. And then you do this math and you get these figures. And yes, they always come out good. They always come out higher. We love to see these high power numbers, of course, right? Our egos. But what's wrong with a little bit more of a conservative number in the way of actually using a 1 hour effort of your own outside?
Yep.
Outside. Now, by the way, it's easier to produce 200 watts outside than it is inside by about as much as 15 watts. So if I said ride an hour for me, Cody, inside, and then go and ride an hour outside, it's going to be much easier to hit that 200 watts outside by about 15 watts inside. It's harder to produce watts inside. It's just the way it is. So if we have a 70.3 that we did, and you're blowing up your board there with all kinds of personal bests, right? And we have more racing to do, or at the end of the year, taking a little break going into the next year. What's wrong with using those numbers, that all-time, peak 20 minutes and 60 minutes? And they even give you a 90-minute. And I personally use those for myself. Like I use, no exceptions, it is what it is. So whatever those numbers are is what I feel like you should use for your FTP, your 1 hour effort. And then you base everything else on that. You pair it with your heart rate. Again, I feel like you really need to have your heart, because let's say 300 watts to me doesn't mean anything unless you tell me what the heart rate was associated with that, right? So if you tell me 320, well, what was your heart rate? Was it 146 or was it 166? And then that deciphers how I make the zones. Oh, and by the way, one important thing we didn't mention, we do two sets of zones, right? I
Yeah.
learned we create two sets of zones. We create a set of bike zones, and then we set a set of run zones. Now they are set 10 beats apart. The bike zones are lower by 10 beats. In some cases, 15 beats, especially again in the lower zones, because
Mm-hmm.
I'm trying to get you to have remember the double digit average heart rate in the recovery zone, right? And the reason for this is your pacing for your races, whether it's an Olympic distance, right? We're going to work with probably zone 3, zone 4. If you're a higher echelon athlete, you can definitely push that. But for Ironman, zone 2. Zone 2, it is what it is. So you've got your zone 2 bike. Hopefully you can hone in on that. And then you've got your zone 2 run. The idea is to average high zone 2 in an Ironman on the bike, and then you can immediately get into your zone 2 run. It's 10 beats. There's some drift there, but that's how now you wouldn't want to flip flop those, right? You wouldn't want to have, let's say your zone 2, the top of your zone 2 is 145
Mm-hmm.
and 155. Or you have a higher zone heart rate, you're younger,
Yep.
you're 25 to 29, 30 to 34. Those are tend to be the faster athletes, the more gifted athletes. They can really go, and they've got some experience now. You wouldn't want to see those flip flop, because then you're most likely going to be walking. I mean, again, I'm speaking from experience, whether it's
And when you
as
say
an
flip
athlete
flop,
or a
Ray,
coach.
and when you say flip flop, you're talking about using that higher set of heart rate from the run for the bike.
Yeah, yeah. If you
So
so
in
that would
summary, so in summary, your bike heart rate zones are 10 to 15 beats lower
yes,
per zone
yes,
than the run zones.
yes, no
I just
exception.
want to be clear.
Yeah, and that's how again we pace the Ironman, especially. Okay, we take some risks with 70.3, with Olympic, with sprints, it's all. But with Ironman, that's for that's from an athlete and from coaching. I've seen hundreds of athletes.
Mm-hmm.
That's where you want to fall. I mean, because again, threshold to me is again associated with FTP, with an hour maybe threshold. That's really, again, people call it redlining. So redlining, no one's redlining an Ironman. If you do, you're going to get cramps, or you're going to be walking, or you're going to upchuck your fueling. Hopefully, it doesn't happen. Stuff like that. So the zones are set for a reason, and that's how I feel like they work best.
Now, Ray, I know we had one topic that we definitely wanted to get to today, so I do want to shift gears. But before we move on, I just want to again clarify that when we're talking about heart rate training using FTP in the way that we're talking about today, we are talking about long distance racing, whether that's 100-mile century rides or 50-mile bike rides or a triathlon, even Olympic up. These zones are going to apply. It's not until we get into 5K, maybe 10K sprint distance races that are lasting less than a half hour, where I've done it with you. We change how we do that high intensity ramping and working out,
Yeah,
right?
yeah, yeah. And listen, again, the correlation is okay. You want to go, okay. I'm not a believer of heart rate. I want to go by pace. Well, the pace is also associated with the heart rates and the wattage targets and the wattage zones, because, okay, so recovery, zone 1, zone 2, zone 3. There's so many zones, so there's so many different paces. You can't run if 9-minute miles is an aerobic pace for you. Then what is your recovery? And then what is your tempo? And then what is your threshold? So if you're if you're claiming that recovery is 9-minute miles for you, then that tells me that you're a pretty damn fast runner, right?
Yeah.
And if you're gonna run you're training for a marathon, and your zone 1 run, your long run pace is 8:30, then what is your recovery pace? What are you running your tempo at? What are you running what are you going to the track and doing? What are you running your 1 hour? I mean, so there's all have to be very different paces within minutes. I mean, minute variance differences,
Yeah.
because there's 10 beats of heart rate. I mean, that's a lot, you know? So anyway,
So, and right as you're talking, and then we're gonna move into the next thing. You're because I'm always thinking from all the different sports that I've coached and participated in, and I know you have too, and I know we've both done the bodybuilding thing at some point. This is one of the few sports I see where athletes, especially amateurs, are obsessed with redlining and getting that top end number or FTP. If we look at powerlifting, nobody goes for max PRs until you're in a competition because the risk of injury. Nobody in sprinting, when I was doing track and field, I know your son is an elite track athlete.
yeah.
We're not practicing top end every day because we don't want to be blowing out hamstrings and calves. We want to be healthy for the race. So we tend to stick around that, building the volume, building the endurance, staying around that 90%. Same with motorcycle racing. We don't go for max because of the risk of injury. We
Yeah.
hang in that area where we're under control and we know where that limit is. And until we're getting paid to go fast or we're pushing for that PR, we don't take those risks in a training session.
Mm-hmm.
So just something I was thinking about as you were talking. And I feel like it's one of those things that gets pushed by the industry and by coaches that just aren't paying enough attention to safety and longevity, especially. And I think for you as an endurance athlete and an Ironman athlete, that your career, that longevity just it's built into everything you do. And I'll speak from experience. Until I got hooked up with you, I was burnt out by every coach I had ever worked with. But I want to actually use that to lead into something that has been so vital to me as a heavier and more muscular athlete is nutrition. And I want to make sure that as you get going, Ray, I want to clarify for anyone asking. I myself am a Scratch Labs athlete, so they help me. I've worked with their nutritionists; they're amazing. They work with some of the best athletes in the world. I landed with them because it works for me. I've tried so many different things that were on the market. I got sick by a lot of stuff. I was messing with volumes that people were telling me until I got with Scratch Labs. That was really just a company that took the time to increase my knowledge and test with me and have those consultations and then working with you as my coach to really dial things in. How does an athlete, one, pick which nutrition is right for them, and then two, use that nutrition to fuel training and racing?
Mm-hmm. Okay, so again, it goes back to your heart rate, because you need to know at what heart rate you can fuel best at, right? And I know that, again, if you're talking redlining or threshold, the harder the harder you try, the higher the intensity, theoretically, the harder is to fuel. I mean, let's think about it. If you're time trialing, you can barely breathe. So how
Mhm.
in the wide world of sports are you going to fuel, right? Those are shorter events. They're usually, just a few miles, very, very hard efforts. So the way you fuel for those is it's called a preloading. You would fuel for that before, much before, right? So it's always about planning ahead. Okay, so with fueling with fueling associated with is heart rate. Heart rate is associated with fueling. Okay, so to pick the right fueling for you, I mean, honestly, this is a sensitive subject for me because, again, going back to the beginning for me and the way I learned, I was sort of thrown into the fire, but I was also kept safe. They explained to me, listen, kid, you need to just keep up with us, watch what we do, and just the name of the game is drink lots of hydration by way of sports drink, and you need calories, you need carbohydrate, and you need electrolyte. However, you get that in your body, it's your prerogative, but you need it, and you need to figure out uh, how much and when, and basically break it down per hour, and then micromanage that probably 12 to 15 minutes, right? And then off you go. And the name of the game is pacing and fueling. And I feel like if you pace correctly and you fuel correctly, you can go basically forever, right? So if you get these things now, then you can essentially the sky's the limit, especially at the low intensity. So in other words, if you're just going out for that endurance ride, that low volume ride, low intensity ride, again, referring to heart rate and then power, it's not low intensity unless I see your heart rate and we know for sure that that's where you're supposed to be or where that falls for you. Okay. So
Yep.
you get the pacing correct. Now the fueling is imperative. So, but without the proper pacing, you can't have the proper fuel because you can't consume the fuel. If your heart rate's too high, you're just not going to want to fuel. So you've got to have these two things matched up. Now,
Now, Ray, can I add something to that? So I have a lot of friends that went to medicine and everything else, and I know your friends and athletes and the family that you're with now. I had heard that when it comes to heart rate and fueling, once you get above zone two, so when you get to zone three at threshold pace, your body actually starts to move blood away from your stomach and uh, stop digestion so that it can push fuel and blood and oxygen to the muscles. Your body, what I heard was that your body actually says, we don't need to digest right now. We need to make sure the rest of the body parts that are working, our arms, our legs, when we're swimming and running, our brain is getting enough oxygen to function. So what I had heard when it come to that is zone two down, where we participate in Ironman distance, that's where we're eating. And then once we get up into that zone three, it makes it very difficult. People talk about cramping, people throw up, they vomit, have to run to the bathroom when they see a porta potty. Uh, does that mean anything to you, or can you speak from experience
well,
on that?
again, this is just overlooking or neglecting knowing what your heart rate is because all those scenarios, and again,
Mm-hmm.
no offense, excuses, that's your body telling you you're going too hard for the particular event or moment, if you will, at whatever ability level you think you are. That is your body telling you, no, 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 you're going too fast, and back off. I mean, that it's really that simple. Okay, so again, this goes back to low intensity volume, like training at low heart rates, doing it over and over and over again, and building yourself to be so aerobic, meaning having a low heart rate at said paces, and that makes you so efficient. So over the years, yeah, I was getting older, but like all these all these years of aerobic volume, huge aerobic volume, low intensity volume, I was able to my heart rate I just get faster, my heart rate get lower, I get faster, my heart rate get lower, and then I could just eat anything, anything. Okay, so on my long rides, you're talking 120 heart rates, 6 7 hour rides, and I would stop for pizza, and I would eat basically. I love my long rides because it's a chill thing. Like, I'm by myself usually, and I can just eat. And again, I'm training my gut, right? It's sort of part of the whole plan. You also have to train your body to be able to consume all this stuff, right? So if you sort of overdo it if you want to overtrain something, overeat because I'm telling you, it may sound ridiculous, but it's a way to really train and test your stomach, your gut, if you will, what you can handle. Because listen, the name of the game in this is the faster you go, the more food you're going to require. Now, there's all different body types, but if you're a bigger guy or a more muscular guy,
Mm-hmm.
or you just run higher with heart rates, you're going to require more fuel. There's no way around it. So, fasting or trying to find ways to not fuel I just don't understand why people do that because first of all, the aid stations are there. There's an aid station every 10 miles.
Mm-hmm.
So it's very easy and very convenient. It's all right there. So I was taught sort of to be able to use anything. And I sort of just stuck with that motto because, again, I don't want to have um, fueling be cost me like a day of any sort. Do you know what I mean? Like, so like I don't have something or I forgot something or I dropped something or I'm so fussy or sensitive that I want to feel like I can't do this. No,
Mm-hmm.
I've used literally everything. I mean, I've run out of stuff and used this or that, or I borrowed stuff, or someone gave
So,
stuff.
Ray,
Yeah.
so yeah, and it's funny you say that because when we listen to any of the big name pros, one of my favorites, and probably just because I'm a Cody Beals, always says Ironman is just an eating competition. And one of my favorite quotes by you that really stuck with me, to be honest, when I was just getting started, was I remember we were at camp and you said, You've raced all around the world and everyone else around the world's eat. And it's just Americans are afraid to eat. We have this culture in our sport where, this myth that carbs are bad or that we don't need to intake all this. And then I use when I'm counseling athletes, we use the analogy you wouldn't try to drive across the country on an empty tank of gas. That's what fuel is. So I don't know how much you want to share because I know on your team Facebook page, you assign pre-race nutrition for race day.
Yeah.
And, it takes a little bit to get used to, but I've been using it for years. It's never got me in the wrong direction. Would you like to share that, or do you want to explain to, especially the newer athletes or new to fueling, what's the best way to general guidelines for fueling pre-race or in long distance training?
Well, first of all, whatever your mixture is, if you will, your makeup, your plan, your fueling plan, it should be designed for you hourly, right? And then micromanaged again. You take a gel generally every 25, 30 minutes ish. You have sort of a body alarm, if you will, to when you should drink or take salt, or you need how many carbs you need per hour, how many calories you're burning. That's important. But when it comes down to whether it's training or racing, I mean, you don't need to really change it because, like, again, you've been practicing it every hour of your training. Your pre-fueling before a session, your during, your recovery. It should just be done. So then it's just automatic. But a race is a little different in the way of when you sort of time yourself and how you're going to pre-fuel or preload, if you will, for the competition. So, you got to get up pretty early to have this particular meal. And it's not it's not witchcraft or whatever you want to call it. It's not a gimmick of any sort. It's pretty straightforward. And it was passed on to me and I put a little twist on it. But it's, on a meal that you would have 3.5 hours before your swim start, very early breakfast. So that's going to be 3 a.m., 3:30 a.m. typically. And then an hour before your race start, eat again, maybe an energy bar, a banana with some sports drink. And then again, maybe 12, 15 minutes before the swim start, have a gel. Maybe you're doing your warm up, have a gel. So there's 3 sort of meals, if you will, before you even started the race. So that's, I think, imperative. And then I've heard what some people eat before or what they think, and you really want to keep it simple, and you want it to sort of run through you. And that's why you give yourself that 3, like, it's quite, because honestly, like, people say, oh, I'm going to be hungry again. It's that far ahead. I'm going to be hungry again. Well, again,
Hey, I have a question for you, specifically about our team's kind of generic pre-race schedule.
Yeah.
I didn't get to race a lot last year, but thinking back to it, one thing that's common for me when I follow my plan, which is not so different than the team's plan that you and me have come up with, that 3 hours before seems to be a really good time frame, because when I wake up for my race in the morning and I put all that in, and I've had this feedback from other athletes too, that's a lot of carbs to take in that early. One thing that I typically feel, and I now know to expect, is bloating right when I eat in the morning. But I know that when I have that long to digest, even though I feel really full and I feel bloated for maybe an hour or 2 after I eat, by the time I get to the race line, I feel as good as I don't feel hungry. I don't feel like I ate too much. I had a couple of times where I got to go to the bathroom and relieve myself because I'm taking a ton of fluids. Did you ever get that sense of feeling bloated from your big morning breakfast before a race?
Yeah, I feel like also too what you ate. The most important meals going back is, I would feel like, so if the race is Sunday morning, the most important meals are actually so it would be Friday evening, so Friday dinner, Saturday breakfast, Saturday lunch. Those meals are the meals where you kind of want to load up a little extra. And I always find that race morning at 3 a.m. or 3:30 a.m. at the latest, I'm not hungry. I'm not hungry. I go to bed hungry. I don't know what that is all about, but I usually go to bed hungry. I've eaten obviously, but I feel like I could eat more. And then when I wake up, I guess maybe it's the nerves and everything else. I'm not really hungry, but I do choke it down. I mean, it's the bulk of it is the applesauce and the whey protein.
Yeah.
So it's, so yeah, so it's no secret. I mean, again, this was passed down to me years ago, and I sort of put my own little twist on it.
Oh.
It's just it's a good dose of applesauce, unsweetened applesauce, whey protein, whether it's a powder or a bar, good whey protein, and then a banana. And then again, the key is a sports drink. You've got to get down a good bit of sports drink, and then you can have coffee if you want. I've done races where I've cut out caffeine, and then introduce caffeine halfway through on the bike and caffeinated gels, and that worked like tremendously well. But that's hard to do, not go on caffeine at all. But anyway, the applesauce, and the whey protein, the banana, and the sports drink on top of it, it's all sort of liquidy, right?
Mhm.
So what I normally do is I normally just I cut up the banana and I make a porridge. So I do applesauce, chopped up banana, and then a heap and scoop of whey protein into vanilla flavor into that, and make a porridge, and then just slam the sports drink down. And yeah, oh yeah, I'm full. I'm just totally full. But a lot of urination, which is a good thing. You should be urinating a lot. Yeah, and yeah, I'm hungry. That hour meal I always have. That hour before I usually have I gotta have a power bar in the beginning, early days, or a banana, and again a whole nother bottle of sports drink. And
So
then,
Ray, I want to move into race nutrition. So now we just talked about leading into the race, starting on Friday. If the race is on Sunday, 3 to 5 days early. I usually actually start 4 days early, clean eating, just plain rice and chicken, three
yeah,
meals a day, nothing but that leading in because I don't want to have digestive issues. You taught me that actually,
yeah,
just clearing out your body with clean protein and clean carbs, almost no fiber, if any at all, because
yeah,
that'll
very
cause CI issues as well. I actually overload on fiber myself about 10 to 7 days before my race, before I start that clean protein and clean carbs was another trick I learned just to really clean out my body. The last thing you want to do is have to run into GI issues on race day. And the reason I want to move into race day nutrition is because I was on the Pathetic Triathlete Facebook page,
yeah.
and my one of my most commented posts I've ever made on that page, a new athlete asked the question, what happens if you have to go to the bathroom in the middle of the race, going number two? And a lot of people immediately started jumping on them with a
Mhm.
negative comments. And I was like, wait, hold on. I jumped in to kind of defend this person. Said that's a really good question for someone that doesn't know better, because there's a lot of weird myths that triathletes go on their bikes and this and everything. I've never peed on my bike. I have an expensive bike. I'm not going to pee on it.
Yeah,
I like my bike. There's time to stop. There's time to go to the bathroom. And I expressed that on my post. And I said, if you have to go, the time that you're going to make up from relieving yourself and being comfortable is going to outweigh the 2 or 3 minutes that you lose jumping in the restroom. So
mhm.
how do we fuel our bodies appropriately hour to hour of the race, and how many bottles should we be taking in? Because let's
Oh
just,
boy.
urination is good. I'm gonna poke the bear a little bit right
Yeah,
now.
yeah,
We've talked about this.
yeah.
What's your take on number of calories in and how many bottles now?
Well, first of all, no offense, but if someone said or asked me about a trip to the porta potty during a race, I would say, well, you didn't eat correctly. It's what you ate or what you didn't eat, so to speak, in a couple of days leading up. So that was good that
I
you
agree.
mentioned that. So I always say eat everything white. So if you think about that, that's everything very plain and bland.
Mhm.
For the last few days, yes, very low, almost no fiber, very low fat, and very moderate protein, because we're trying to, like you said, lighten up, if you will, and just process glycogen. We want to store up glycogen.
Mhm.
And especially the last 21 hours, you really want to be careful with the fiber and the protein, because, again, your body has to digest all that and then remove it. And again, TMI, but the idea behind the applesauce breakfast is I'll just say that if you eat it at 3 a.m. like I do, you will understand what I mean 3 hours
Yep.
later. And I will just give you this one quick tip. What I do, I'm telling this to everybody now. Maybe if everybody does it, then it won't work anymore. But so my routine when I get down to transition is I go to the bathroom first.
Yep.
Go to the bathroom first. Everyone seems to go to the bathroom last. Now, there's two reasons why I did it. Well, it wasn't not to sound, but we had our own bathrooms after a while. The last few years, they had separate pro bathrooms. But going back to the beginning, I would always get down there early and I would go to the bathroom first. It sort of relieved some anxiousness. I'd
Yep.
go to the bathroom first and I would then go to my bike. But now the like I said, TMI, the reason for this is I really had to go because of the way my diet was for the last day and a half, and then what that breakfast does. Okay.
Yeah.
And we'll just leave it at that. But that's the point there where I've never been in a porta potty during a race. I just have not.
Mhm.
I'm not ashamed to say I have peed myself on the bike. I have peed in transition two, which is satisfactory, but you should be having to pee on the bike. I mean, that's a basic sign of, prehistoric sign, if you will, of our caveman. You fueling correctly, because I was taught if you're not peeing, you're not drinking enough. It's really that simple for anybody. If you haven't peed, you're not drinking enough. It's that simple. And it's either you haven't drank enough or you're going too hard. Because again, cramps, that bloated cramping feeling, you're overpaced. It could be a thing where you're overpaced, underfueled, then you're really doomed, right? So anyway, the thing with the porta potty and what if I have to go to the bathroom? Well, I would like, geez, I'm sorry, but let's go back and figure out what you ate leading up to the race. Because honestly, my opinion, with my experience, I don't feel like you should have to do that during a race. Because of what you've eaten or not eaten, again, so to speak, leading up. I'm just talking the final day before the race, right?
Well, man, you're 100% right though, because I remember after my first Ironman in Tulsa, I did have to go to the bathroom multiple times during that race. And I remember calling you and you just saying like, "What'd you eat yesterday?" And I listed off, and you were like, "Dude, that's not what I told you to do."
Yeah,
And we fixed it 6 months later, going into Maryland,
yeah,
and that was to date the best race I've ever done.
yeah.
So definitely something to that. Now, this is a topic that gets me going, and I know it's gotten you going before. I don't know where it came from, but I have been seeing athletes using even the small water bottles, the 20 fluid ounce instead of 28s, loading them up with about 300 or 400 grams of carbs, so maybe 15 scoops
Mm,
of their sports drink,
mm,
and sipping on that during the race, as opposed to swapping out bottles at every aid station,
yeah,
stopping to get their aid bag where they can reload with another 3 or 4 bottles, and not just taking in their maybe not it will say 80 to 120 grams depending on who you are as an athlete from beginner to pro, but taking in multiple bottles so that they're also hydrating
yeah.
instead of just trying to get in a little fluid with a lot of carbs.
You asked how many bottles. I'll answer that.
Yeah. So two different styles. And for me, I'm trying to get to where you were at with bottles. And I'm going to let you say it because I know people have picked on you from it,
Yeah,
but I've literally seen you take in this many bottles per
yeah,
hour.
yeah, yeah.
So how many bottles are we supposed to in your experience?
So again, my style, the way I like to coach is through history, through my trial and errors and being very practical. It's not theory, it's not my opinion, it's what has happened. So going back to 2012, I was at a camp, pro camp, and with a big group of established professionals, and we're riding in Claremont in the heat. And off we go. And I was sort of, they sort of watch you. This was my first day with the group. They sort of just watch what you're doing, watch your habits, check out your bike, see how you sort of behaving yourself, carry yourself. So long story short, we go on a 100-mile ride, more or less, and I probably drank a bottle an hour. I can't really remember. It wasn't much. Okay. and I was hooked. This is the first time I really trained with a large group of professional triathletes, well-established professional athletes,
Mhm.
heat for that long a period of time. So I was cooked and frustrated and already like beating myself up. And coach pulled me aside, how many bottles you drink? And I was basically told him, I just told you. And he's like, no. He's like, how much do you weigh? At the time, I probably weighed about 186. I'm
Mhm.
6'2", so I'm a pretty good sized guy, especially for a triathlete. So he's like, Ray, I want you to drink as many bottles as you can tomorrow. I want you peeing once per hour. And if I don't see you drinking, I'm going to throw something at you. So, he was like, haha, let's. So I drank, I think I calculated, we did another, again, back-to-back days, excessive heat and humidity in Claremont, Florida in February, late February. And I think I drank about 13 bottles. And I felt so much better. And it was at the time we were sponsored by Power Bar. So it was the original, in my opinion, I feel like one of the best sports I've ever drank, whether
Mhm.
from performance wise and taste wise. It was the Power Bar Perform Lemon Lime. We had it endless supply of it, and I drank 13, probably at least 13 bottles of that anyway. And obviously it's probably some couple colas, and it was like I felt like it was like night and day. Okay. So I learned quite quickly um, that I was significantly under fueling for someone with my ability.
Mhm.
So we dialed that in. So basically, for my next big race, which was 2013 Ironman Louisville, my fueling plan was 4.5 bottles an hour with 2 gels. And that's what I did. And I basically haven't changed it since then. And, obviously I've had a decent career. But my hourly fueling plan and my pre-race meal, and the way I sort of eat and carry myself for the final, day and a half, it has not changed since basically that day because it worked. And why would I mess with it? The name of the game is, again, broken down per hour. Your body needs calories, carbs, quite frankly, it's sugar, right? And
Yep.
electrolyte, right? Electrolyte. Everyone's talking carb now, carb, 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 carb. Well, even though you may have a specific high carb you need to hit per hour, and they're really trying to push the envelope with that. By the way, that's all pertains to the heart rate because if your heart rate is too high, you're not eating anything. Okay, you're not. And if you're faking it, if you're undertrained and you're trying to push, it's going to come right back up. It's not, virtually impossible. You're going to have cramps. You're going to
Mhm.
be kicking back up your fuel, and then there goes your race. So it's carbs, calories, electrolyte. And within that is, I mean, for myself, think about that: 4.5, 5 bottles per hour. My average bike splits are say 430. So every 4 hours, that's how many
Yep.
bottles is that? No exception. There is no exception. It's not sometimes that's not um that's not hit this race, that race. If it's generally within the same vicinity, that's my fueling plan. And on training rides, same thing. And what does that mean? My bike has has 3 cages on it.
Mhm.
That'll get me through. And the little trick to the trade is I'll shotgun a bottle right before I leave the house with a gel. And then that already puts me, I'm already 1 bottle in and I haven't even started the ride yet. Right. So then within the hour and a half, I'm stopping, refuel, again, shotgun a bottle, and then I've got 3 on the bike. And yes, people say, well, you stop. Well, of course I stop. I mean, we stop. I mean, professionals stop. I mean, how do I know? Again, because I saw. Like we stop. I mean, we stop quite frequently, and it's quick. It's not like shenanigans, lollygagging. Because you got first of all, you have to pee first of all, and then you've got to refuel. So wherever you are, and where if you're doing these long, low intensity rides, you better have money on you and nowhere to stop
Mhm.
because otherwise you're gonna have some bad experiences and it's dangerous especially if you're by yourself. And the name of the game is what's that heart rate and how much fuel you have, and sky's the limit. I mean, honestly, it's really that simple. If you understand the zones and
Yep.
where you're supposed to be, so that you're able to consume an immense amount of fuel, you
Yep.
you you can go forever. You go forever.
Yeah, and Ray, I can, I know for anyone listening to this thinking 4.5, 5 miles an hour is just not possible. I can say it takes time to train your gut, as you were saying before. For me, as an amateur athlete with okay bike splits, now trying to really focus on my bike. For me, being a 5 hour, Ironman bike rider, trying to get down close to that 445, which is the next big step. I weigh more, I'm 6 foot. I race at 190, so I carry a lot of muscle. I drink 3 bottles an hour, 24-ounce bottles filled with, my nutrition, which is Scratch Labs. Use what works for you. But I remember calling you after Texas. It was my first time racing in a very hot race. It hit 95 degrees during the race. I had a good bike split. For me, it was paced right where I wanted it to. I cramped on the run. Mile three, immediately, my race was over. And I remember calling you and saying, I raced like I was in the Northeast where it was cold. I needed to be on that 4 to 4.5 bottles per hour just to be almost ready for that run. I was underfueled, and that's all it came down to was accountability, especially on a hot day. And even just, pulling in that biological perspective, we are mostly water, and our cells need fluid to be able to function appropriately, and we need electrolytes, and we need carbs as energy. So not getting enough fluid, leads to dehydration, and that's what leads to cramping and GI issues. And that's what happened to me when I raced in Texas on a race where honestly we were ready. We were ready to hit my goals. I felt the best I've ever in my life, and even at peak performance, I underfueled, and it's very difficult to overfuel. I've yet to do it, and you've seen me eat.
Yeah.
I don't stop eating. Um, so again, I just want to drive that home. And then one last little tidbit. It's actually funny that you mentioned that Power Bar was your go-to nutrition, because I think I just read or I was watching a Instagram page with a professional bodybuilder with a degree in cellular biology. So she really knows her stuff. I really enjoy her page. She's always quoting science. I have to find it so I can tell everyone. But she was actually saying that Power Bar, Power Energy, whatever the drink company is, they offer the best between your mainstream brands like Gatorade versus Powerade versus I think they were doing Vita Cola or something, vitamin water. The the energy drink that you were using has the best combination of fructose and sucrose, which is why I like Scratch Labs, but they also had the highest degree of potassium to make sure that electrolytes were also getting in. So my point being, I've been with you. You showed us when you're out on those long rides, you need to stop. It's okay to pick up a regular Gatorade or a
Yeah.
power energy drink from the store, load them up. It doesn't have to be sports nutrition. To your point, training your gut, it's important to be variable and to be able to use whatever's there, because if it's race day and you're taking in extra nutrition, you can't have all your bottles on a bike and properly fuel for a 5+ hour race. Um, you need to be able to use what's on course as well. So I have one last fun question for you, Ray, from experience. What is the proper heart rate zone? And how many? How do I want to ask this question? For me, the fun question is that came through from training from camp at Lake Placid is what is the proper heart rate zone for digesting ham and provolones, and how many can we take it?
So, I think I would say 110. Let's say 110.
110.
So yeah, so when you mentioned being versatile, so when I was out in Kona for 10 days during the race this year, had a nice little traincation with the girlfriend. She volunteered, by the way. So I didn't bring anything with me, any nutrition with me, and they had obviously the Mortal, and which we've been hearing a lot about,
Yep.
eat a lot of opinion on that, and then also Liquid IV. So on the record, again, two more tests, if you will. I mean, I had I used Mortal hydration and liquid IV, you
Mhm.
know, double doses. So what I do is I have 3 bottles and I put 2 packets in each bottle, if you will,
Mhm.
or scoops. And some of them I might even put 3. So I used stuff that I'd never used them before. They were there. Joanna got them for me from her conference, and I used them for what? I don't know how many rides I did in 10 days. It was like 4 or 5 or 6 rides.
Mhm.
In decent amount of time out in the Queen K. I was putting in, back and forth, and so it worked fine for me. I mean, I've heard or people asking or
Yeah.
whatever, and I mean, again, it was either that or I wasn't gonna ride. I don't know because I sure as hell wasn't gonna just drink water.
Yep.
Um, I bought some bananas from the store at the hotel, and I think maybe some Rice Krispie treats, and I just chugged those bottles down. Um, so again, there's another example of I just took off and it was fine. So I
Yep.
really feel like that's my years of trying anything. I mean, I pull over at the gas station in the Woodlands in the middle of Montgomery, County and or Magnolia, whatever,
Yep.
and just whatever they have, caffeine too. I mean, don't shy away from caffeine. I mean, it's a performance enhancer if you don't abuse it.
Yep.
And I just, I made sure the name of the game is made sure I have enough calories, enough carbs, aka sugar and the electrolyte, potassium, sodium, magnesium, and then just keep going, keep
Yeah.
sweating, keep the sweat going. You don't want to stop sweating. You stop sweating, it's it's bad news. So
Yeah. Okay, so thanks for those insights, Ray. And for anyone questioning what I was talking about, we were at camp in Lake Placid, and it was the first time I saw anyone do this. We stopped at a convenience store, and Coach Ray here was just hungry for real food and made his way an extra 5 minutes. That way he could get I think it was like a ham and provolone or something. Half a sandwich and
turkey
kept
stuff.
going. Yep. And then, but to prove the point of you need to eat when you're out. And yeah, I've done it on training rides with friends where we've been out. And, I remember one ride, we were just my local big loop and we were about 4 hours into the ride. I was just sick of eating Cliff Bars was all it
Yeah,
was. I was
yeah,
sick of gels and Cliff Bars.
yeah.
And I told my buddy, we're stopping for a slice of pizza. We stopped for 10 minutes. I
Yeah.
had a Coca-Cola and a slice of pizza and I felt phenomenal. I just got some carbs and some real food in my stomach. So fueling, guys, just
I,
fueling.
and again, my style is just through experience and watching my peers. And my peers have been lucky; they've been some talented peers, and I've seen, you know, Swedish fish,
Mhm.
yogurt pretzels. I can specifically tell you times where I stopped on rides and had pizza and Coke, and you can feel how good you feel. You can feel
Yeah.
it works, right? So people, it's just a trust thing. And my advice to anybody is, where is the information coming from, and what have they done on specifically their own? What is their background? What is their history with it? It's not theoretical. It's like I've learned all this stuff through mistakes, quite frankly, trial and error, and just remembering it and seeing it. And fueling something is something to me that's very, very. It's simple. I mean, it's getting more and more complicated as we go in technology and the times. But I'm telling you, coming from a guy who's now 51, who started doing this craziness at 19, did my first century ride at 19, and I used Gatorade, salt and vinegar chips, Coca Cola, and Fig Newtons. That's what I used, and we weren't buying. So it's nothing's changed. I mean, they that stuff is all available to us now. I mean, it's a number. It's a number of carbs that you need, calories, and you just
Yep.
you go, and it's really, I don't think it should be complicated. I don't. So,
Yeah, and I think that goes with everything about this sport. As technology gets better, it's phenomenal. It helps us perform, it helps us hit new heights. But like everything else, you need to know how to use the tool. And so much of what you do is keep it simple and you show us how to use the tools and you show us what the data means. And for someone like me who's younger and I'm scientific and I love numbers, at the end of the day, a stopwatch can do the same thing. So it's just about how do we manage all of this data and use it appropriately. And that's why I've always respected about working with you. You don't let me think too far into it. And, you know, working with you, as you've always said, if I'm not getting faster, I'm not doing the work. And we've had those years where I couldn't do the work, and we've seen what happens. It's like everything else. So, Ray, we've been going for a little more than an hour. So I know we went a little bit more than what we wanted to, but I think we talked about a lot of really important stuff as it pertains to everyone from top to bottom. So I just want to wrap up and say thank you to all of our sponsors and supports. Anyone associated with the Be Beautiful Foundation, Zupac Athletic Club, or RB Fitness. Our team discounts include some of our favorite brands like Roll Recovery. We have the Magic 5 goggles. We have Blue 70 for all the swimmers. We have 51 Speed Shot for the bikes. We have Rudy Project for helmets and sunglasses. I think we have Spy glasses as well, sunglasses. We have Scratch Labs, Honey Stinger have been a really big support for us. Every time I get on, I can't talk enough about Roll Recovery. The fifth discipline of triathlon, in addition to nutrition, is recovery above everything. Like we started the conversation with Ray, they make some of the best recovery tools that you can have on the market. I've been using them all the time since my surgery for the past 3 months. They really helped me get back into the field. Be Beautiful Foundation, working with special needs athletes living with developmental disabilities, providing sports counseling and personal fitness with the help of Coach Ray from RB Fitness, being the head of everything we do when it comes to safe training plans and managing our athletes. Myself as a licensed clinician offering free sports counseling to anybody on our team. And of course, Jack Crew Apparel, our main apparel sponsor that does the best looking kits of any team out there. I'm our photographer. I do all the photography for marathon photos and the Ironman. So I get all the feedback. I do designs for pro teams. So of course I save the best for us. They've been a massive supporter of us, and we're the best looking team when we show up to races. So if you want to find us, bebeautifulfoundation.org, or our hub for everything Zupac including Be Beautiful Foundation at zupacac.com, Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube at Be Beautiful Foundation and Zupac Athletic Club. Ray, give a hook for where we can find you again.
My Instagram is at RayWatch73. Everything is synced up to that. It's a good way to get to follow me, get a hold of me. And my website is raybotellofitness.com.
Awesome. Thanks, Ray. And I don't know if we have any of your running athletes doing the Fred Lebo New York City half marathon tomorrow, but I'm going to be out there behind the camera.
Nice.
So I'm going to be looking for anyone wearing an RB Fitness shirt or a Be Beautiful peacock. So I will be at the finish line. Make sure we send out a group message to the team and just remind everyone to smile for the camera. Look for the peacock. I'll be behind the camera. I'll make sure we all look good.
Okay, thanks.
Ray, always a pleasure catching up with you. We'll do it again soon. And like I said, thank you for everything. Everyone, hashtag stay beautiful, hashtag be beautiful, hashtag race speed. See everyone next time.
See ya.